freaked me the out, frankly, which is extremely scary and upsetting, equal parts messed up and heartwarming, which I think is kind of my sweet spot. And there's something unsettling and unnerving about that. I'm a little lost for words about how to describe this. He's kind of a piece of Hi, I'm Sam. There's quite literally no one asking me to do this, but I have more weird and disturbing book recommendations to share with you. So the first one is Brutes by Dizz Tate. So this book is really about the collective experience of a group of tween girls in this Florida town and the events that transpire after the town preacher's daughter goes missing. So this was an interesting novel to me because while we do get individual points of view from each of the girls, there is still this really constant sense of the collective we, and how even though they obviously all have their own individual experience of the event, at the heart of their experience is the fact that they experienced it together. So that was very interesting. Their community is also very obsessed with fame, and I think that there's this sense that fame could be a ticket to get out of their small town, and they don't feel like they have many opportunities aside from maybe getting a lucky break. So there is a plot point where the girls are all trying to audition to, kind of get this sort of like Disney Channel-esque break. I feel like there is sort of this subgenre of literary fiction that is specifically set in Florida. It's like weird girl from Florida literary fiction. I am not from Florida, but I have read and enjoyed many of these books. And I think if you also enjoy books of this nature, then you will most likely enjoy this one as well. Next is one that I have not yet talked about on the channel. So that is Foe by Iain Reid. I have read Iain Reid before. I've read We Spread and I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And if you've read any Iain Reid, you'll know kind of what his formula is or his style, where he has this very, I don't want to say confusing prose, but it's like very purposely withholding and not providing you all of the information. And there's something unsettling and unnerving about that. So it's really effective. I think almost all of his books, if not all, have sort of a big twist at the end. Iain Reid is one of few people who can actually keep me guessing right up until the twist happens. And I almost always enjoy his twists, and this was no exception. This is about a man who is living out in this kind of secluded area with his wife. It's not really discussed exactly like what the time is, but it's implied that it's in the future, and it's in an environment where climate change has really decimated the earth. So he's approached at their home by this man who comes and says he has been selected as a potential candidate to be sent up into space, to basically go be the first settlement in space. And arrangements have already been made for him, and it's communicated to him that if he is in fact selected, he doesn't have to worry about leaving his wife behind, because they will provide a stand-in for him that is basically like a robot version of him that will look after her and make sure she's not lonely. And, basically the robot will do his job and still be able to provide for and care for the house and his wife. So obviously a lot to unpack there, a lot to untangle and discuss and explore, and Iain Reid definitely does it in a really fun, mind-bendy way. I don't think this is a particularly new novel by any means, so maybe you all have already heard of this one, but yeah, I recently read this one, really enjoyed it, and I think you should read it if you have not yet done so. Next is another new one to the channel, that is A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. This is a relatively, I want to say obscure, but I feel like it's really been popping off lately. But this is an indie psychological horror novel where a man dies and goes to hell. What's so interesting about this story to me is that the main character was a very devout religious man his entire life. And then once he dies and is sent to hell, one of the workers in hell basically tells him that he just happened to choose the wrong religion. And the religion that actually leads to salvation is this really obscure, kind of insane sounding religion, indicating that most people on earth go to hell. And the hell he is sent to is based on the Library of Babel by Borges, which is basically just this library that contains every possible book that could ever be written in the entire world. So to give you an example or an understanding of how vast that is, I'm going to read parts of the appendix to you. Contains all of the books of a certain size that can be written. So that could be a book that just has a period in it. There would be a single book for each character on the keyboard, for every single word, for every single sentence. So we're not even talking like entire length books here. We're just talking about any possible iteration of like what could be written, and the rest could just be blank pages. So the library contains all the books of a certain size that can be written. I assume all the characters on a standard keyboard, and that each book is 410 pages long with 40 lines of 80 characters on each page. So the total number of characters in the book is 1,312,000, with about 95 possible characters on a standard keyboard. That implies that the number of possible books is 95 to the power of 1,312,000. A rather large number when one considers that there are only 1.5 to the power of 80 electrons in the entire universe. That kind of gives you a sense of how vast this library is. And when our main character is sent to this hell, he is given hope that he could eventually get out and reach salvation. But the only thing is he has to find the book that is written about his life. So therein lies the problem, because he has to basically look through an infinite number of books. And we're really just following him through the millennia, the eternity that he is spending in this hell trying to find his book. And I should also mention that the rest of the hell is relatively livable. You can go to this food dispenser and request any food you want. There are a lot of other people, so communities start to build. He finds new friends, he finds new love, but there is still this ever-present sense in the background that, oh shit, we are still in hell. And I thought this was amazing. I really, really liked it. I think indie horror can be really hit or miss, but this is definitely a hit, and I think you should read it. The Case Against Satan by Ray Russell is a classic horror novel that I have only recently read within the last couple years. It's kind of a shame that it's not talked about more, because it was really influential for exorcism and possession horror as we know it now. So this is about a teenage girl who, is very sweet and normal and goes to church every week, until one day she starts to act really out of character. She's acting very vulgarly, violent, just so out of character, to the point that people are starting to be concerned that she is possessed by the devil. So of course they recruit this younger priest to help them vanquish this evil and solve this issue. Of course they uncover some darkness that they were not expecting. So that's all I'll say. Definitely, if you have not read this one and you are a horror fan, especially a possession horror fan, I think you should give this one a read. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that it would read a lot more like basically every other possession horror that I've read, since it was kind of a blueprint for a lot of them, but in some ways it still felt really fresh and exciting to read, even this many years later. So I think you should read it. Next is one I just read for my book club with my friends. This was Hum by Helen Phillips. This is a kind of sci-fi dystopian. Honestly, it's a horror to me because I'm like very personally afraid of surveillance and kind of like the way that our society is moving towards the use of AI and the monetization of our time and the shrinking privacy in our lives. So this is about a family, and mostly a mother, who previously worked to help build AI systems and has now lost her job and become obsolete because of AI. And to make ends meet and provide for her family, she does kind of these odd jobs. And one of these odd jobs that she does to provide for her family involves her undergoing facial plastic surgery to subtly change how her face looks so that it will be unrecognizable to surveillance. And pretty immediately, it is scary how integrated humans and her family are with their devices. And they have what are called these wombs, which are basically like this 4D experience. It's basically like our phones, like how addicted we are to our phones, but as if it was like this capsule we could go into, and it would show us content based on what it knows about us and what it's learned about us and our likes and dislikes. The children also have these smartwatch devices that constantly track them and their vitals, and again seem very inextricably linked to them, to the point that there are no children really who do not use these smartwatches. So the mom is really wanting to reconnect with her family and with nature. And this is another story where it's implied that climate change has really irreparably destroyed the earth. So now green spaces are such a rarity, and you have to actually pay quite a lot of money to go visit these green spaces. It's sort of seen as this luxury. So she spends the money she got from her plastic surgery to take her family on this weekend getaway to this green refuge, these botanical gardens. And she forces her family to leave their devices home when going to the botanical garden. And then, of course, plot and chaos ensues from there. So a couple things that really disturbed me about this were, first of all, there was an instance where she got into like an Uber, and it's obviously self-driving, and she has to pay money to not see advertisements while riding in this Uber. And again, really getting at that idea of our time being our currency, and how less and less of our time is actually ours, and we're having to pay for our own time. And it reminded me a lot of how, at least in the area that I live, when you are getting fuel for your car, on the pump there are like TV screens that now are showing advertisements. And that just feels like we're really not so far from that to being in a self-driving car where we have to pay money to not have an advertisement blaring at us. Basically like how we pay premium for streaming services, I think we're not very far from that translating into the physical world as well, which is extremely scary and upsetting. I think if any of these themes or ideas intrigue you, I would recommend it. Was this a perfect 5 stars for me? No, but I thought it was very thought-provoking and freaked me the fuck out, frankly. Next is one that I read, I think again in the very first year of my channel, so this one feels kind of nostalgic to me. That is Almond by pyung-sohn. This is about a boy in South Korea who lives with his mom and grandma. He is not able to feel emotions, and so he really isn't able to feel much empathy, but his mom and grandma help keep him on track and make the right decisions and make sure he's not kind of doing anything bad to himself or others. But then there is a traumatic event in his life which really changes the whole landscape of his life, and he starts to be bullied by this troubled teen. And then really the novel is about how the relationship between the protagonist and the bully impacts both of them, and really questions whether someone like our protagonist who cannot feel emotions can actually make a friend. This is another one that wasn't like a perfect 5 stars for me, but I still thought it was sort of like equal parts messed up and heartwarming, which I think is kind of my sweet spot. Definitely it's one that I recommend, and I think you should read it if you have not yet. Okay, last on today's list is one that I completely bought blind, mostly just because I thought the title was really cool. So that is Like Flies from Afar by Ferrari, translated by Adrian Nathan West. I'm a little lost for words about how to describe this. This is like a black comedy whodunit crime thriller all rolled into one. We're following this man who is just like objectively a piece of shit, Luis Machi. He is kind of this like mafioso in Argentina, and he runs a lot of shady businesses. He has gotten wealthy and powerful by stepping on any person he possibly can to get where he wanted to be. He's surrounded by skeevy people. He does not care who he wrongs. He's not a good guy. He's kind of a piece of shit. Really, the whole novel kicks off when he goes to his fancy sports car and he finds a dead body in his trunk. He does not recognize the person. He has no idea how it got there. He himself did not kill this person. Really, the whole novel is about him trying to figure out who planted this body here, who is trying to frame him, and how the heck is he gonna get rid of this body without being found out by the police. So it's kind of reminiscent of A Christmas Carol in that it's sort of him walking down memory lane and revisiting all of these people from his past that he fucked over in some way. But then it's kind of funny. What's funny about it is that he's so obtuse and like unaware of how much people hate him, because then at the end of like each recollection, whereas someone like Scrooge was like, oh, maybe I need to become better, at the end of his reflections, Luis is just like, oh, well, there's no way that they would be that upset at me though. Like, think of all the good things I did for them or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. This was just like such a fun little read. It's kind of raunchy. and it's dark. It's not like the best person to be following because, like I said, he is just like such a freaking scumball, but it kind of makes it that much more satisfying to like watch him squirm. You know, like from the beginning, you're like on the other person's side and you like don't even know who's doing this to him. You're just like, yeah, he kind of deserves it because he is a piece of shit. So yeah, I think if that sounds good to you, you should read it. It was a lot of fun. Okay, those are a few more weird and or disturbing books for you to read and hopefully enjoy. So you can like this video if you want, comment, let me know if you have any weird or disturbing books that I should read. If you've read or loved or hated any of the ones I talked about today, you could watch my other videos. You could subscribe. Would love to have you. And I'll see you in whatever video I make next. See you guys next time. Bye.